It kind of reminds me, you know, of that period when health and safety legislation first came in. There was a kind of a great resistance to it. There was kind of an idea that the nanny state was there interfering, but now actually, you know, when you are briefed about health and safety leading from the top, it kind of feels correct.
A lot of people do see it in that same vein, because we now have a culture of reporting near misses. People would not let a near miss go, because next time it might cause somebody's death. And trying to get that culture as a read across into, if you see something being done incorrectly, will you speak up? Will you tell somebody else about it? We did a national survey on people's attitudes to business ethics or ethics in the workplace, and 25% of those interviewed said that they had seen unethical behaviour, but of that only 25% actually responded and did something about it. So there's an awful lot that was going unreported.
Let me ask you just one final question before I turn to David. Does it muddy the waters that, for example, in the US, grease payments, as they're known, are permitted, and under the new Bribery Act here, they're not? I mean, in other words, are we on a level playing field with the rest of the world?
Well, two things there. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in the States actually says they're illegal if it's illegal in the country you're doing business in. Now, a lot of countries actually do have it in their law, but they don't enforce it. So that's one issue. And it has always been a sort of backdoor way that the Americans have tended to pay facilitation payments, it is said. But there's also talk that because of this new legislation, which is setting an international bar now, that the Americans are looking to perhaps revisit the FCPA and perhaps change their attitude towards this, because the OECD convention bans facilitation payments and more countries are banning them. So the Americans are slightly out of step.
It's interesting, isn't it, though, as we kind of embark on this, we hope, road to recovery. If you look, David, from your point of view, I mean, as DG of the Chambers of Commerce, you know, we're talking about export-led recoveries. We're talking about empowering the SMEs to carry us forward. Isn't the reality, even if people are on one hand slightly ignoring it, isn't the reality that people can't necessarily afford to adopt it because they're out there fighting for every order they can get? Isn't there a danger that people are going to be corrupt simply because they have to?
No, businesses are not corrupt, and as Philip said, they want to sleep easily bum in their bed. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the issue is if we're to get out of the really economic state that we're in, we're going to get a firm economic recovery. It will be business, it will be mid-sized SMEs, length and breadth of this country, that are going to drive that recovery. And as you rightly say, it's going to have to be export led. We need to rebalance the economy away from the public sector, get that growth, get those exports. And I think that's one of the difficulties with this, because you may have your own practices in place. You may be able to, sleep easily in your bed. But the worry is, for many small businesses, of course, they're using agents to actually operate on their behalf in some of the more difficult markets in the globe, not least which this government is encouraging us to get into, to take advantage of the fast growth on parts of the other side of the globe. So the concern for many of the SMEs will be, how do we ensure that people acting on our behalf as part of our chain into those markets are actually acting properly as well. And I think that's really going to be the difficult part. And I think there is a huge difference between a small business and large business. Large business has access to professional organisations. The one we're in today, it has its own full-time staff. Small businesses, in the main, it's the owner, the partner, doing a lot of this stuff at the weekend, genning up, then putting in processes. We've seen it with employment legislation. It is a major barrier to small firms. What we don't want to happen is for this to operate in the same way.
looking at the Act from one point of view, you'd say perhaps to be squeaky clean doesn't necessarily look like the way of doing the most profitable business, and yet is that the way you'd see it?
I think I go back to the point that says one of our concerns from the outset has been the whole naming of the Bribery Act. We actually worked with one of David's members, which is the Surrey Chamber of Commerce, at a recent business-to-business expo. And we stood and spoke to over 50 exhibitors and Kempton Park Racecourse full of delegates and visitors, and asked that question, are you aware of the Bribery Act? And the concern is, I think, if it was called the Best Practice Act, alluding to some of the things you just spoke about, I think many business owners and managers would see it as a very positive step forward and a reputational enhancer. The concern with the bribery is that bribery, I still think, is perceived as dirty money in brown envelopes. And for our concern, that people seem to believe that they're not in the act of bribing anybody and therefore don't see the paying for the golf club lunch or paying for even the staff Christmas do or a sponsor doing something. I think it's more about seeing a point that says this is not about hanging people out to dry. This is not about saying you have managed your business in any form of underhand way. It's a way almost of trying to get, I believe, most businesses up to a playing field that, as I say, if it was described as a best practice act, I think people would be knocking on the door to learn out more. I think bribery is maybe a taboo subject.